Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our budget hearing for Victor Central School District, as well as Meet the Candidates Night. My name is Tim Terranova, proud superintendent of the Victor Central School District, and behind me is Derek Valise, our assistant superintendent for business. First, a shout out. Today is Teacher Appreciation Day, so we really appreciate all our faculty and everything they do for our kids. Just want to make sure they're recognized for that. And a special thank you not only to the PTSA for putting on the Meet the Candidates Night right after our budget presentation, but for the incredible teacher appreciation luncheons that they're putting on across our building. So big thank you to the PTSA. I know we are live streaming this at home, so this can be, obviously you can see it live, but it'll also be taped and put on our YouTube channel and our Facebook page, so people can watch this presentation at any time. So without further ado, I'm going to start, and then Mr. Valise will join in at many different places. We always start our presentations with the goals, and then we'll talk about specifics around the revenue and expenditures for the 24-25 budget. And also talk about personnel recommendations, and finally we'll talk about the budget calendar review and have an opportunity for any questions from the large audience in front of us. So goals for the 24-25 budget. It really comes down to a few small areas. One is we have to absolutely emphasize a comprehensive education that Victor Central School District is known for. We are very focused on aligning our resources to our strategic plan, which many in the community participated in creating. We are going into our third year of a 5-year strategic plan, and that really helps drive how we spend our money and the focus on what resources are most important. A third piece to these goals is to make sure we have a quality budget strategy where we stabilize our reserves, we maximize the use of every dollar spent, and we certainly maximize our ability to generate aid on future budgets. So it's that concept of having a budget strategy that's really focused on maintaining a sound strategy for many years to come. And last but certainly not least, we want to be as transparent as possible. Mr. Valise.
So we'll start talking about the budget. First thing is, when you start developing a budget, is you have to look at the revenues to figure out how much we can afford. So this was an interesting year. It's not uncommon for the governor's budget to be late, but this year it was especially late. So the Board of Education went ahead and adopted a budget based off of one of the proposed budgets that was provided by the different branches of the government. Specifically, the Assembly and the Senate had proposed a budget in which all of this year's funding would be restored, plus an additional 3% in funding, due to the timeline in which we had to approve the budget versus when the state actually adopted the budget. We had to go forward with the best possible scenario, because the way that these budgets work is once the board votes on it, there's no adjusting it. So if we did not budget for those money and then we ended up receiving them, we wouldn't have been able to use those money. So we developed a plan, and this is essentially what the plan was. So based off of the Senate and the Assembly's budget, they were proposing that the district received all the funding plus 3%, which would amount to just under a $1 million increase, or 2.54%. I know that's less than 3%, but there's multiple components that go into state aid, such as reimbursable aid, such as building aid, BOCES aids, et cetera. The largest portion of that is what's referred to as the foundation aid, and that's where we were hoping to get the 3%. In addition to our state sources is our tax levy increase, which we will talk about in a little bit, but that was, according to our tax cap calculation, to stay within the cap was just under $2.5 million. Other sources of local revenue that we have included in the budget this year are such as facility use fees, interest revenue, and other local money that we receive from the community. And then our federal source is just our Medicaid billing. So for our high-cost special needs students, the district does try to recoup some of that money by billing Medicaid. And we look at a 5-year trend, and we felt comfortable with $100,000 for the federal aid. In using those numbers, we were proposing a budget of $103,224,919, which amounts to 4.35% increase. And the proposed positions based off of that budget, Dr. Terranova will share.
Thanks, Mr. Valise. So in terms of additions, we looked at three major areas. The first is enrollment increases at our intermediate building. We've had a spike in enrollment in that one section of 4th through 6th grades. In fact, we're looking at potentially 17 sections of 5th grade next year. So we needed to add staffing for the intermediate building to make sure we maintain quality class sizes. We also looked at adding a partial teacher for our strings program at the elementary level. And then the other major area of increase is in special education. That is because we have started a new program this year, which is the Integrated Co-Taught program, which really supports kids with special needs to have greater access to grade level curriculum with appropriate supports. And to finish off the continuation of the ICT model, we are adding ICT staff in the intermediate building and the high school, and that includes teachers and teacher assistants, and we are also adding a second behavioral specialist. Right now we have one behavior specialist. We're going to have 2 behavior specialists next year, which will support, again, kids, especially those with complex behavioral needs. And then the last piece on this addition is the substitutes. Since we received federal COVID money, we've been using a portion of that money to pay for 5 building substitutes, each for the 5 buildings, and that includes health care and salary. So, and that's to really support our needs around substitutes and the deficit that we have around substitutes. So that came to an original price of $1,368,707.
Unfortunately, the weekend of April 20th, the governor did finally pass the budget, and unfortunately that did not come to fruition. What did happen was we did see an overall increase from the original February governor's proposal, but year to year from this current school year to next school year, the state is going to give us an additional $20,000, which is mostly made from one of the goals that Dr. Terranova shared, where we make our expenses to try to generate future aid, and that's mostly what drove that $20,000 increase. It wasn't any increase in that foundation aid number. Everything else stayed the same, and with that number, the district had some tough decisions to make, because we always try to put our students and staff first, and unfortunately we didn't get all that money. So these are the revised personnel changes that the district's going to be using going forward based off of the revised state aid number.
So basically what happened was, as Mr. Valise said at the beginning, we were budgeting for the most money we thought we would get from the state, which would be basically a 2% state aid increase, because if we didn't do that and we got that amount of money, we wouldn't be able to add the positions because you can't change the budget. So unfortunately, as Mr. Valise said, we lost about $950,000 from what we projected, which we knew we might not get, to the actual state aid, which is roughly 0.09% increase, which is a challenge. So how do we make up that $950,000? First and foremost, we reduce the amount of money we're budgeting for significant health care costs in the future. We really believe that health care costs are going to shoot up pretty significantly in the next 2 to 3 years, so we were going to try to set aside roughly $400,000 for health care costs in the future. We're not going to do that. We're going to set aside roughly $180,000 for that. We're still projecting at least a 1-year increase of 16% in our health care, but at the same time, we still think it might be more than that, but we are going to reduce the contingency on that. So that'll go from $400,000 to $180,000. That saves us some money. We're also going to reduce the amount of money that we typically save at the end of the year in expenses. We like to have roughly between 3.5% and 4.5% of our total budget saved for emergencies and or to put in our reserves. That has been a really strong positive strategy that we've used the last few years. Typically, like I said, it's 3.5% to 4.5%, but next year we're going to cut that down to 3%, which definitely makes it a thinner margin of error, but also enables us to use roughly $550,000 for staffing rather than contingency savings, and then about $150,000 in savings in terms of reducing the staffing additions that I talked about a couple minutes ago. And where that happens is we reduce the early elementary strings position part-time because we believe that we can still support strings at a high level. And we also reduced a little bit from, I think it was 1 to 2 teacher assistant positions for the special education support in the ICT, but we feel like we can definitely still support that at a high level. And we took out healthcare benefits for each of the building substitutes in the 5 buildings because most of them don't use healthcare anyway, and it's a reduction that we feel like we can still support. So we basically saved $150,000 by reducing the additions to staff, but the significant amount of that $950,000 comes out of not as much savings for healthcare moving forward and reducing the contingency at the end of next year.
So those were just the additions, but here is the overall total budget. 80% of our money goes directly to our best resource that we have, which is our staff. It's comprised of both salaries and benefits. In addition to that, we have a few other expenses such as debt, and that's mostly prior bus purchase and capital projects that we have to make do. You can't pay more, you can't pay less, so we've already committed to those dollar amounts. Besides that, we have equipment, which is anything that's a high cost item that we purchase. Contractual, which I like services, utilities, things of those natures, supplies, materials, and various types of materials. Overall, there is no increase amongst those codes. We moved amongst those codes except for one-time increase of $350,000 to the equipment line. One of our philosophies when we build a budget is we use one-time revenues for one-time expenses, and we've noticed that there's an opportunity to upgrade our current bus camera system to make it more user-friendly and be more accurate. So we are using a one-time increase in interest revenue to make that one-time purchase investment into our bus camera system. As we buy cameras or buses, the new camera system will be on it, so there is no additional cost. So this is the budgeted expenditures that the community will be asked to vote on. So it will be $103,224,919. But because of the changes that Dr. Terranova just mentioned, sorry, I got ahead of myself. So the budget proposition that the community will be voting on is that $103 million. But unfortunately, because that didn't happen, our actual expenditures for next year will be $102,267,136, and that's based off of those changes that Dr. Terranova shared. So it's a proportionate decrease in expenditures as the revenues that were shared between the 2 state aid models that were presented earlier. So if we were to look at the budget to budget, we were looking at a $4,300,542 increase, which is 4.35%. In terms of the tax levy, that is an increase of $2,489,602, which is a 4.43% increase. At this time every year, the district tries to do its best efforts to try to estimate what the tax rate will be. And we do this simply by taking the assessments that were used for this year's tax rate, and we increase it by a factor created by the state of New York called the property tax growth factor. So if we were to increase the assessments based off of that growth factor, we get a tax rate increase of $14.46, which represents a 40-cent per thousand increase, or 2.82. I do want to also add that these tax rolls are not finalized until June 30th, so as everybody has seen the growth in the community, it is likely that this tax rate will the actual tax rate come August, September will be significantly lower than this, but right now we're doing the best that we can do to calculate it. So based off of that tax levy, up on the screen is a chart of the tax impact for various pricing of houses. If you were to look at a $300,000 house, the tax impact for a year is $118.92, or just under $10 a month. And again, these rates up on your screen are not subject to any exemptions that you may have or credits depending on such as Star or Enhanced Star.
Thanks, Mr. Valise. I do want to add, because I think we had a question from one of our previous presentations. In the first two rows, you have professional salaries and support salaries. It looks like professional salaries are going up 4.42% and support salaries are going up 0.4%. The reason for that is, and professional salaries are our teachers and faculty, and support staff would be support salaries, is many of our individuals who were in the support staff technically as teacher aides have shifted over to teacher assistants, in part to support the ICT model, but because of that they shift over to the category of professional salaries. So it's not like we're significantly increasing professional staff and not support staff. It's a shift in individuals from one group to the other. And I'm just going to show three quick slides. The first is the tax rate history from the year 2000 to 2024. You'll certainly see an obvious decline in our tax rate. This is considered the true tax rate, which is if every single home in the Victor Central School District was assessed at its full value. We know that there's different assessed values for homes. Farmington did a recent assessment. Victor has not done one yet. And we know that depending on how your home is assessed, your taxes could go down or your taxes could go up. We're not dismissing that. But we do know that consistently, even though we have added staff the last few years, our tax rate has actually decreased. And when you look at that tax rate comparison, you can see that before our vote on May 21st, it's still significantly lower than the average tax rates in Ontario, Monroe, and Wayne County school districts. And even after the vote, with the highest possible tax rate we'll have, which is $14.46, and we certainly expect that to be less than that because of our history of what happens to our tax rate, even without adjusting the other tax rates for the schools in the other three counties, Victor is still significantly lower than the average tax rate in Ontario, Monroe, and Wayne counties. And then if you look at per pupil expenditure, which in the nutshell is the total number of students divided into our total budget, again, our per pupil expenditure before our vote is significantly lower than the average per pupil expenditure in the school districts in the three counties, Monroe, Wayne, and Ontario. And after the vote, when our expenditure does go up a bit, and without adjusting the expenditures in the other, per pupil expenditures in the other schools, which will be adjusted and will go up, we are still significantly lower than the school districts in those three counties. If you remember in 2019-2020, we actually had the third lowest per pupil expenditure in the entire state. We have made some progress in that, obviously, but still, when you compare it to schools across our area, we are low.
So in addition to the budget, there are two other propositions that you'll be voting on in addition to our Board of Education election. The second proposition is our annual bus purchase proposition. These buses will be purchased in the 25-26 school year. The community last May voted for the school buses for the 24-25 school year, so those are already ordered and we're waiting for them to be delivered. For the 25-26 school year, the district is looking to purchase 6 large diesel buses, 1 small gasoline wheelchair bus, and 1 small gasoline bus with an estimated cost of $1,375,000. In addition to that bus purchase proposition, we are asking for support for the community to establish a capital reserve in the amount of $20 million. This does not actually have any bearing on the tax levy. It just gives us a vehicle, as Dr. Terranova shared earlier, when we have unused budgetary funds at the end of the year, we can save those to offset future expenses such as maintenance and renovations to our existing premises, and that's what the district's looking to do. In the last couple of years, we did 2 different capital reserves and $10 million, so it just made sense to go ahead with one $20 million one for the next several years. And last but not least is our Board of Education election. We currently have 2 open seats that are available. Both are 3-year terms. And after we did the drawing for the order which they will appear on the ballot, this is the order as you will see them. First will be Miss Carol Prescott. Second will be Miss Elizabeth Mitchell, who's an incumbent. And third is Mr. Adam Snyder, who is also an incumbent. So going forward, starting today, right now, we're doing the budget hearing. Immediately following this presentation, right to my right, will be Meet the Candidates Night, sponsored by PTSA and PI. If you guys remember, we are you have to be a registered voter to vote at our budget vote. So on Tuesday, May 14th, in the district office conference room, we will be holding voter registration from 3 to 7 p.m. And then on Tuesday, May 21st, in the Board of Education room at the ECS, will be our budget vote and Board of Education election, and that will go from 6 in the morning until 9 o'clock at night. If there's any other questions anybody has, please feel free to visit our website at victorschools.org. There is a link right on the front page that you can click that says 24-25 budget with some information. And as always, you can always reach out to Dr. Terranova or myself if you have any additional questions that you have for us. So any questions from anybody right now? You want to go up to this? So the electric bus the question is, what is the electric bus timeline? Currently, right now, we are working through one of the many phases of the electric buses, and we're doing a study with our bus manufacturer. We're giving them the routes list that will tell us how much electricity we need. Once that's completed, we go work with the utility companies to start figuring out if they're able to give us that energy. A possible solution is that capital reserve will help us make the infrastructure necessary for it. So currently, right now, we're going through and assessing the needs that we need to purchase electric buses, making sure that there's enough electric coming on campus and that the utility company can support that. And then from there, we'll be looking to make decisions. But right now, in the current budget, the state has not stopped the timeline, so it still is effective July 1, 2027. No more diesel buses can be purchased, with the whole fleet converted by July 1, 2035. Any other questions? No, I didn't.
So thanks, Mr. Valise. Thanks for the great presentation. Just a couple of reminders for folks. Today, thanks to our communications department, Kim Dole and Elizabeth Welch, along with Derek's expertise, we will be mailing out the budget newsletter that goes to every family in the Victor Central School District community, which is just packed full of information, including biographies on the 3 board candidates, but a ton of information about our budget, so I encourage everybody to read that. We will also, like I said, post this presentation both on our social media and on our website. March 14th, just a reminder, I know we mentioned it, that's voter registration. That's for individuals who have not yet registered to vote yet in their lives, or at least, I guess, recently. If you have any questions, give us a call at Victor's at the superintendent's office if you're questioning whether you need to register to vote or not. And then, of course, May 21st, 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. in the ECS boardroom. We encourage everyone to come out and vote. So thank you for your time tonight, and we're going to turn it over to the PTSA for Meet the Candidates Night.
At this time, I'm going to invite the candidates up. Hi, I'm Tara Glynn from Victor's Parent-Teacher Student Association. Thank you so much to VCS for allowing us this forum tonight. I have Kristen Morabito along with me this evening. So while the candidates are taking their place, we're just going to let you guys know that in just a few moments, we're going to have you introduce yourselves and tell us why you're running for the board. Just like a little 1-minute version, just so we can be mindful of everybody's time tonight. And while you're doing that, we're going to be collecting questions from the audience so that we can ask them. So one of us will go around and pick up your cards if you have any. Okay, I'm going to let you introduce yourselves. Take it away, Adam.
Yeah, Adam Snyder, incumbent. I got 1 year on the board. It's been been a great year. The number one thing I would say that's just been very interesting this year is I never expected to have such a good relationship with the group of people that I'm currently with on the board. We have a lot of respect as a group. So honestly, one of my main reasons for continuing to run is because I appreciate our group so much. Original reasons for wanting to run for the school board. I'm a parent with 4 kids in the district. Jace is in 4th grade, Liberty's in 6th grade, Lincoln's in 8th grade, and Jordan is a junior. So I have a lot vested in the school district, and I wanted to be a teacher. Once I got out of the military, we had 4 kids at that point, and getting out and starting as a new teacher just financially wasn't really going to work, and so that bothered me. That's one of my other reasons for wanting to be on the board. I feel like schools should have the flexibility and teacher salary, all that good stuff, to allow people from any career path to step in. People from the outside sometimes have a good perspective and can give a lot to the school. So that frustrated me. So I wanted to get involved as much as possible. Doing this has definitely filled that void. I also participate as a coach on the board for the Victor Boreas Youth Lacrosse program. So that's not quite teaching, but it's as close as I can get without actually being a teacher. So yeah, that's a little bit of me.
That's teaching. That's teaching.
Thank you.
I'm Carol Prescott. I've been in Farmington in the district for 20-ish years or so. I have 2 kids. One graduated in 2021 from Victor, and one's graduating this year. I've been volunteering here for like 17 years. When my kids started school, I knew I wanted the most for them, and so I started volunteering, but then I quickly realized that I'm helping all kids. So like my main goal is helping all kids and supporting teachers and supporting parents. So I've been doing that through PTSA, through PI, through Victor Robotics. I've been on shared decision-making teams. I've been on building council in all the buildings. So I've worked with lots of different administrators and teachers, and it's just been wonderful, like, learning so much about the inside, not just from the outside as a parent. But now my youngest is graduating, so I need to get back to work to pay for all those college bills. So I have been doing kind of full-time volunteering, so now I kind of need to step away from the full-time volunteering and get back into the workforce. But I can't pull away yet, and I still want to contribute to to Victor. So I was thinking that the Board of Education is kind of a nice niche where, your scheduled time, and I can kind of be a step back from that day-to-day volunteering and still make a difference. So that's why I'm running this year.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Mitchell. I'm an incumbent. I served 3 years currently on the Board of Education. I'm a mom. I'm a kindergarten teacher at Pittsford Central Schools for 16 years. My husband, Dana, and I moved to Farmington 7 years ago when we built our home. I have 2 children in the district. Emily is a 1st grader at the ECS, and my son Patrick is a 4th grader at the intermediate school. And I have always wanted to serve in a service capacity within a Board of Education. When I was younger, I had to go for a school project to some sort of governing board, and as a 6th grader, I went to a couple school board meetings, and I've always been interested in the function of the board and how it supports a district. So once we put down our roots in Farmington, when my daughter was in preschool and my son was in 1st grade, I decided to run. And in the past 3 years, I've served on the policy subcommittee, technology committee. I've done a significant amount of advocacy work, a trip to Albany, meeting with legislators, attending legislative breakfasts. I have attended the state conference. This past year alone, I have about 30 hours of professional development as a board member within Monroe County School Board Association or the New York State School Board Association. I've attended summer law conferences, labor relations committees, information exchanges. I've also been the spearhead for getting my entire group of colleagues into building visits in each of our 5 buildings, as well as transportation and building and grounds. So we get the 0-foot view of a snapshot on how the district functions. It gives us a chance to engage with students, with teachers, It helps us make decisions from a budgetary perspective, from a curriculum perspective, and I think that has been very valuable. So I'm seeking re-election because my kids are still young and I've got a lot of time left to give.
Great, thank you guys so much for that. We've got some good questions coming in. So what we're going to do is give you guys about 2 minutes each to answer each question. And we're gonna stagger the start. That way we're not one person isn't just always the starting point for the questions. So we'll start with you, Carol. And our first question is, as school board members, what is the one thing you would work to change in the school district?
So one thing. So first of all, the board doesn't always get to make policy. You kind of are approving or questioning. And there's no one thing that meets everybody's needs. Like, there are a lot of little things. Definitely engagement would probably be a universal thing, kind of trying to make sure that families are engaged, that teachers are engaged, that students are engaged. Because, like now we live stream these meetings, but in the past, we weren't live streaming them, and I know there were 5 of us in most board meetings or parent information sessions or any of those kind of things. Like, it was just, a few of us. So now I'm a little hopeful that people are watching these at home on their own, but that's kind of either a sign of people are apathetic about what's going on in their school system, or they're copacetic, they're complacent, everything's fine, they don't need to come to a meeting. But I feel like we need to kind of be engaged, and keeping, knowing what's going on in which building at what time, and what the opportunities that our kids have, in the current building they're in, and then the next one. So definitely, I would say an overarching goal would be trying to get people engaged.
Is it my turn? Can you repeat the question, Tara? Thank you.
As school board members, what is the one thing you would work to change in the school district?
I think an increase and added advocacy is necessary. We saw from the budget presentation from Dr. Terranova and Mr. Valise that while our budget is not as in dire need as it was a few years ago, there's still room for advocacy at the state level. And I think one of the major functions of a board member outside of creating policy is to advocate for our students from a financial standpoint and from a programming standpoint. So I see myself within the next 3 years continuing the work that I've done in the past 3, and just to continue to apply myself as much as I can along with my colleagues to meet that need.
If I could change anything, I think it would be, I would love for Victor to be a place where teachers and anyone that's outside this district saying, I want to go teach there because that district is the best. That's a place I want to be. The morale is high. You're supported there. And so how do we get there? Our current administration, it's tough to see, but the foundation is in place for things to get increasingly better here. And we're not all the way there yet. It's going to get there. And being on the board, I get to have conversations where I know things are happening and they haven't fully trickled down. And I think it's going to get there. But what do I want to change? I want to keep that momentum. And I think we got to keep that momentum by supporting our staff and our teachers, our administration, and getting them whatever it is they need. When they tell us they need something, we need to support them and get it to them, because they're doing this all day long. They are the troops on the ground. They know what's going on. As a board member, I don't have a pulse on everything. And I was with the Teachers Association today. I got a chance to go talk to them. And as we were sitting there talking, it turned into a conversation. We were floating ideas. And I'm like, this, as a board member, this is probably what we need to do. Like, we need to sit down and talk in small groups where there's no punitive conversations at all. It doesn't leave the room. What's actually going on? And so I think that's what we need to do, and I want this to be a place where everybody in Rochester says, I want to move to Victor because I want to be a teacher there. I want to work at that school district. I want my kids to go to that school district because they got everything there. And it is. It's a lot of people do think that, but I think we got some ways to go with that.
The next one's really about what unique skill, interest, or experience would you be bringing to the school board? So I'll start with Elizabeth on the end.
Absolutely. Avoiding eye contact with my colleagues, I am the youngest board member, and I say that as a joke, but also it's true. And I'm sorry, Tim. and I have very young children in the district. And aside from that, with my early childhood background, I think I have a lot to offer in perspective in terms of early childhood education, early intervention. And I just finished a 35 credit hour micro-credential at SUNY New Paltz in the science of reading. And that's the direction that the bulk of our ELA instruction is moving in. And I think being a teacher of young children myself and having that area and that skill set, obviously I advocate for all children, but when I look at our programming and when I look at our strides that we've made in curriculum, that's a specific area of expertise that I can bring to the table.
Can you repeat the question? I think it was pretty simple. You can sit down if you need to.
What unique skill, interest, or experience would you be bringing to the school board?
The majority of my career was military, and no matter what you do in the military, it's all about building teams and trust and ensuring everybody is understood. And I think that is, as much as I have very strong opinions on things, I can quell those to work with a team, and I like balance. I like when everyone feels like they have input, and I like when everyone feels heard, and I like meeting in the middle on things. And I think I do hope the other board members feel that way about me. I think they know I disagree with them on some certain things, but I love working with them, and I feel like we have done that this year. And I think having a good team and working with a team, even when you disagree, is really important as a board member. And I think I can bring that, and I think we can get things done at a faster rate when you have people that are willing to do that.
Thanks. So as far as what do I bring to the board, lots of experience in Victor. So it's here, like I was here for all those budget meetings when we were cutting staff and deciding whether to go for pushing over the cap, things like that, and all of those losses, and then the gradual building back. So I've kind of been around for all that, so I bring a lot of experience in working with, there are some amazing teachers and administrators that we have worked with, and families, we've worked with together over the years to make things happen for kids, give students opportunities, give teachers the support that they need to do their job, and just support in general. So I kind of bring all that experience and the connections. I'm kind of that mom on the side of the lacrosse field or soccer field, chatting away about, the last meeting that I went to. So people will ask me questions about, like a budget or what's going on at school. So I have that connection too. Like I do want to be the voice of parents and residents and teachers and students. So I think I would bring that.
Okay, this one's a little bit of a longer question, so if you need me to repeat it, I definitely can. When you hear inclusion, diversity, and equity, how do you believe special education students fit into these principles that our district aims to uphold? How, as a board member, do you intend to keep students with disabilities as part of the conversation in all aspects of the decisions being made? And how can you use your role as a board member to ensure inclusion and equity for all children? So Adam, we'll start with you.
Can you give it one more time?
Yep.
Everybody, this will be like the second
All
one.
right, got it, Adam.
When you hear inclusion, diversity, and equity, how do you believe special education students fit in to these principles that our district aims to uphold? And how, as a board member, do you intend to keep students with disabilities as part of the conversation in all aspects of the decisions being made? And how can you use your role as a board member to ensure inclusion and equity for all children?
My niece has got special needs in school, and she's special. She has Down syndrome, but she's kind of the light of the family. It's interesting. We had one of the meetings that Elizabeth had coordinated for. The entire board crew got to come through, and we were walking through the school, and I saw her, and she grabbed Dr. Terranova's hand, grabbed my hand, was walking us down the hall, and I was just thinking to myself, you know, this is part of education, and I know there's a balance with what's happening in the classroom and what's not, but the reality is everything we're doing is education, working with anyone and everyone and learning, and that is part of the educational program. My son, Lincoln, one of the best compliments, I got a letter from a teacher once, and I appreciate that so much when teachers send letters, but he was working with a student with special needs in one of his classes, and she sent home and said, hey, he just acts like he really cares. And that made me so proud when I got that. He does a lot of great things, and I'm so proud of him, but that one was really special. And I just think as we work with the mission and vision, and we work these things in, and it becomes, you know, the mission of the school, I think that is the basis foundation. As a military person, your mission is a very, very big deal, because it's the driving force from that. No matter if you're having a good day or a bad day or whatever it is, if the teachers can remember, this is what we're doing here, this is what we're about, that's what I think your mission should be. I think it should be that strong. And if everybody knows it, I don't like 5-page documents. I like concise documents that say, this is what we stand for. If we have that, and that's part of it, you know, that can reverberate throughout the entire school. And that is where special education is just really important, because we can integrate that into everything we do. It's for everyone, and you can have kids learn how to be leaders, and you can have kids learn how to work with people that think differently. It's collaborative, and I think as we continue with the mission vision of the school, that it's going to be wrapped in that. I think that's what's going to happen anyhow. So it'll be good.
Carol, you're up. Do you need me to repeat any part of the question?
I think
Okay.
we're good. DEI is an important thing, and it looks differently at different age levels and in different buildings and different classrooms. One of the things when you're looking at special ed is the individual education plan. Like, it's individual for a reason. So what works well for this student? What works well for this family? Because my brother has also Down syndrome, but he was 52. He kind of went through the education system. At his time, it was all self-contained classrooms. You really didn't have that inclusion piece. You didn't have that interaction with gen ed. But things have changed, and it really is up to that family, that individual. Like, some kids flourish in that inclusion. Some kids need a self-contained. So I really advocate for those meetings where you're the teacher, the aides, the service providers, the family, talking about what's best for that student. So I think we need to look at our individual students as opposed to what makes sense financially or what makes sense for the group. And realizing that everybody needs to be included and respected and thrive, giving a chance, opportunities for kids to thrive, and being able to, let the experts kind of identify what options might work well for each kid. But definitely, I think it's, each child is different, so we need to look at it that way.
So I have a couple ideas on how specifically parents are able to feel that they have a voice at the table. I think one of my good friends uses the term meaningful inclusion, We can't call it inclusion. It has to be meaningful for the child so that they really feel that sense of belonging and that sense of community. Parents obviously know their children best, and they definitely need a seat at the table. And I think overall, we have a lot of people who are willing to come together with parents and work together. But I think, it's those vulnerable, genuine conversations that need to continue. I also think, we're in our first year of the ICT model for special education. I think that's going to continue to be refined and supported by the district. And obviously, as a board member, I fully support as much inclusion through that ICT model as possible. When I was at the New York State School Board Conference in the fall, one of the presentations that I sat in on was all about special education and making it meaningful in terms of inclusion. And one of their ideas was Challenger Sports, which we have unified right now, which is gen ed peers with their special ed peers. And Challenger Sports is like a straight, all-out sports league, so to speak, and division for children with IEPs. And I would love to see something like that come down the pike with the funding. I also think, peer mentoring, Best Buddies is a group that we have in the district where I work, and I think that would be a wonderful addition here. And what's great about Best Buddies is it can be implemented in any building within our district. And it's a great partnership with peer mentoring, with gen ed children, with their special education peers, and even something like different PTSA events. At times I've heard from a few friends like, oh, this would have been such a fun event for my child, but it was really overwhelming because of X, Y, and Z. And I think, groups like PTSA are so open to feedback and really want to make an environment that's welcoming and affirming for all children. So I think even looking at school events, both during our school day and after school and co-curricular activities with a more inclusive lens is really important.
This next one is give the Board of Education a letter grade, A, B, C, D, or F, for its work this past year, 2023-24, and explain your reasoning. So Carol, I'll start with you in the middle.
Okay. All right, well, I can't be straight A's, so I'll have to go B, because, we can always improve, always ever better. But no, I think everybody did fine. I don't think there were any major issues that I noticed. I think there are a lot of things that are out of the board's control, like with the capital project, with the waiting for state approval. So there are some waiting games there. But yeah, I don't think I saw anything horrendous, right?
Do you have a grade?
Yeah, well, because I can't give straight A's. I said B, B plus, you always leave room for improvement.
Elizabeth, you go next.
Sure. Being on the board for 3 years, I think we have an outstanding team this year. I think we all function really well together. I think there's a deep level of respect and trust that our group operates on. And, we refer to ourselves as the team of 8 with Dr. Terranova. I would say probably B plus, A minus. I know that there was a lot of PD that, many of my colleagues put in this year, and there's an ebb and flow in that ability. But I think each member brings their own unique perspective to the table, and at the end of the day, we make decisions that are best for our children, best for our staff, best for the district, and we come out in a unified way. That's not to say that we always agree on everything, but we respect each other's perspectives and differences. And I think just the level of advocacy work that we've had this past school year, the presence that we've had in buildings and at different events, I would say B plus, A minus.
My initial thought was A, but the truth is it's probably a B, because I've had conversations with some teachers recently, and while the board works together well, we do have limited abilities to do things. And like I talked about earlier, there's just ebbs and flows of things that are established, systems that are established, and that take a while to catch up. And so I can't say A because we operate, I think, well together, but the truth is there's a lot of stuff that needs to get done. And if we are part of the leadership team and people are unhappy, and there's a lot of people unhappy, then we have work to do. So we operate well together. As she was talking about, first year, there's a big learning curve your first year, that's for sure. There's a lot of information to understand, you know, your left and right lateral limits. What are you responsible for? What are you not responsible for? You know, I almost feel like I'm just getting in the saddle after 1 year trying to figure this stuff out. So, but now I think we got a good grasp on it. So I would say B. I'm gonna give it a B.
Okay, thank you very much. This next one actually was sent in to us from one of our PTSA members, which is actually one of the teachers too. And it says, how do you plan to support the teachers at the largest primary school building on campus, which is VIS? Actually, I'll start with Adam.
Say it again. Give me a little more time to think.
Okay. The question that came in is, how do you plan to support the teachers at the largest primary school building on campus, VIS?
Well, I would start with talking to the leadership, finding out what resources do we need, what do we need to make that place operate the way it needs to. I think that the big picture, I've always loved the idea of the fact that Victor is a single campus, and this is far out. This could be years down the road, but I think it's tough. I think schools have a hard time becoming. Each of the individual schools have a hard time having their own identity, and I think issues or concerns trickle in between the buildings because we're on top of each other. You know, with a school that big, sometimes I wonder if we had another school in Farmington potentially, that would open up an opportunity to kind of spread load things a little bit, because with it being that big, it's always one of the biggest concerns. And so, you know, maybe there's not a magic potion that we can come in and put the right people in or have the perfect amount of staff. Maybe it's a fresh perspective on that. For right now, though, what does Dr. Terranova tell us? Ashley Sokola, what do we need? What do you need to make this happen? That's the best thing I think we can do. I don't have a perfect answer, to be honest with you, about exactly what can fix or assist in that situation, but listening to our leaders and making sure that we do our best to get them what they need.
Okay, how about Elizabeth?
It was interesting. I was talking with one of our security personnel about the intermediate school when I came in, and it's a very unique building because of the age of the kids as they come in. So they come in very young, as you know, freshly out of third grade, out of the primary school, and it's a huge building with a lot of transitions, getting used to teaming. So I think something and a way that the board can support the teachers is to maybe increase our presence and make ourselves more accessible to see some of those day-to-day functions. I wholeheartedly trust Dr. Terranova and the information that he gives us. I also think it's important for us to be able to be present and meet with the teachers, and that's why those building visits are so important. So I think it might be, you know, an option to, if we can't all go as a team, to maybe go more independently, which I did in my first year before we did group building visits, because I think it gives us an opportunity to engage with the staff and to really see what their day-to-day looks like and the function behind it. I also think just having really honest, genuine, candid conversations about the needs of the building and how the board can best support that between staffing, programming, any other budgetary pieces that they might need for, you know, upcoming years. And just knowing that we are there to listen and to support and to advocate on behalf of them is huge.
Okay, great, Carol?
So intermediate is big. It's been big for a long time. This year is really big because there's a class of 350, which is over what like our current class is. And with Victor, I've noticed over the years, like our class sizes kind of go up and down. So we'll have some that are at 200, some are like 290, 300, and some are up at 350. That means a lot of like teachers having to switch grade levels, you know, lots of adjustments. And our staff have been wonderful over the years doing that. You know, it's like if you need to move up to fourth grade or down to fourth grade up to sixth grade, a lot of people have adjusted to meet the needs of enrollment. But there's also the physical space. You know, it's like there used to be an art gallery, now that's 2 offices. There used to be an auditorium, now that's the library. You know, it's like we're kind of busting at the seams, running out of space there. And that makes everybody frustrated. You know, it's like, I don't like being in a, you know, tight apartment with, you know, lots of kids. So like when you go to a hotel room, you're all, you know, a little stressed, more stressed than at home. So think about that every day with, you know, over 1,000 kids. That's stressful. So, you know, my thought would be just talking with the people that are in the space, talking with the teachers and the aides, and seeing what kind of ideas, you know, eliciting ideas, having that brainstorming session as to how can we manage this so, you know, students aren't going to lunch at 10 o'clock just because there's not enough, you know, seats in the cafeteria to fit all the kids in the school. So like there are things like when you're in the school that are just so stressful. So it's, you know, maybe that, you know, before school starts or, you know, at the end of this school year, something that like just sit down and really talk with the people who are in the space every day, who are working together, trying to teach our students and, you know, work together to get everything done, and just elicit those responses and go from there, trying to think creatively of, you know, how can we maximize, because we are blessed to be on one campus. I think it's one of the features that I love about Victor, and, you know, we want to maintain that, but we have to kind of think creatively on how to do it.
Okay, so imagine you are at the end of your school board service. What 3 achievements do you want to be most remembered for? Elizabeth, we'll start with you.
I want to be remembered as somebody who really was a fierce advocate, not only at, you know, the budget season at the state level, but also just an advocate for kids and what teachers need to do their jobs and to do them well and to feel supported. I also think the building visits, I know I keep saying it, but I think it's been a huge game changer for us as a team when making decisions. And I also think, third, finally, just elevating student voice and helping to support that in any way that I can. Thinking one specific example is Dr. Terranova now meets with junior and senior high school representatives, a group of students, and I think he's able to have really great, authentic, real conversations about things that they feel are going well and things that they find to be concerning or that they want to put on his radar. And I think I've been a big champion for student engagement and student voice. So those would be my 3.
Adam, we'll go to you. So what 3 things would you most want to be remembered for?
Be remembered for as being a champion to make Victor the place to be. So I guess it's not really revolved around me to be remembered for, but I want this to be a destination for teachers and kids and parents to come to this community. Second thing would be I would want my kids' experience to be so good here, all kids' experiences to be so good here that they want to come back here someday and live in this community and do the exact same thing that they experienced while they were here. And then I would want the administration and the teachers to be upset that I was leaving because they were so supported by me. I hope that they have no question and no doubt that I'm here to support them in their task, which is, as a parent with 4 kids, the most important task out there. The teachers have our kids more than we do when you add up the time, and so they are raising our children. So yeah, I would want them to be upset about that I was leaving, because I supported them so well.
And so I would hope to be remembered as being approachable and accessible and somebody you could talk to, and someone who is the voice for lots of stakeholders, you know, across campus, across, and, you know, in the community, because we're not, you know, the school is kind of the center of the Victor Farmington community, but you have to think of outside of our campus, you know, how our decisions affect them. affect everyone. And also would like to not be remembered as like that, just the rubber stamp. You know, it's like the board shouldn't just be, oh, approve, approve, approve. You know, somebody who really read through all the information, who, you know, went to meetings, who, you know, went for the professional development and the learning, and, you know, questioned when things didn't all add up. Or I know early on when I would be in shared decision-making meetings, like, I'd be the one that, you know, asked, okay, what is that acronym? You know, it's like there's so much alphabet soup in education. So it's like that, being somebody that questions and brings it down to a level that everybody can access, not just those of us involved in education. And yeah, so just being that representative voice.
All right, let's see here. So ongoing two-way communication between the school district and parents is key to building strong partnership and trust. In your opinion, as a board member or prospective board member, how important is parent input or feedback in shaping the district policy? And what are your recommendations for possibly improving communication? We'll start with you, Carol.
So communication has improved over the years. Like, I think adding Parent Square is good as far as getting the word out. You do run into, sometimes parents need to know, like, which steps, like, you know, who to contact about what. So that's kind of an education piece. But it definitely, it's like we just need to keep doing it, because we might think, oh, you know, we've been going to Peach Jar for information for years, but or Parent Square, or, you know, whatever avenues are there, you know, the website. But each year we have new parents come into the district and they don't have that history. They don't know where to go to get information. So we need to make sure to be hitting that each year. And anytime we have a new student or a new family, letting them know what resources are out there, or where are the, you know, go-to places, or, you know, who do you talk to first? Do you talk to your classroom teacher, then you talk to your building principal, and you go up the steps. And, you know, where do you get your information? Because there's so much going on at, you know, any time of day or night. It can be overwhelming. So just kind of being, you know, giving parents and families that guideline of where to go. And you're being open and accessible to that kind of to comments, and, you know, suggestions and feedback, and realize that this might be one person's comment. It might represent 10 people, or it might represent one person. So kind of, you know, using that information. And then also, I think over the years we've done a lot of surveys, so that gets you one set of data points. I like the focus groups and the, you know, meeting with students that Dr. Terranova does, and meeting with, you know, groups of teachers, groups of family members, kind of get more of that open and honest dialogue as opposed to just checking a box on a survey. So I think there are avenues, and I think we have been getting better at it over the years, so I hope we keep doing that.
Thank you, Carol. Adam, we'll go to you. Do you need me to repeat the question? Or?
No, I'm good, thank you, though. It is tough. When we moved here, I spent my first year watching all these organizations and just trying to figure out what I can get my kids involved in. And we missed a whole bunch of things. I mean, we were an athletic family, and I missed half the registrations just because I didn't know where to go for that. And then getting involved with the school was tough. We tried to talk to the teachers, and just getting used to the system. There is a lot of information and communication. Sometimes it's almost too much. And so, you know, I almost wonder if there's like a place where we could create like the parent pack, or parent registrations, or parent volunteer coaching, you know, the Teachers Association, anything they can get involved in, but pretty much just communicate to the community that we need parents involved. You know, if your kids are here and they're involved in any extracurricular activities, or even if it's even coming in to sit down at lunchtime, you know, We need parent volunteers to be, lunch monitors. We could do something like that where you sit down with your student, anything that parents get involved. I don't know. There's so much, it's almost overwhelming. And so it's like, how do you condense that? Do you create another website, another email? It's really hard to do. But as parents move into the district, we could create a combined site. You could post something like that. I don't have any great ideas. I know it's frustrating though even for us when we first moved here.
Can you repeat the question? Thanks.
So, ongoing two-way communication between the school district and parents is key to building a strong partnership and trust. So, how do you solicit input from parents on policy that directly impacts students and their families, and what would your recommendations be for improving communication?
So I think Parent Square is definitely, it seems to be turning into like the catch-all for communication. What I think is great about Parent Square is that you're able to directly message your teacher for your child and not have to keep track of what email did I send this through. It's like a text thread, so it maintains the history of the message, and you can have more than one teacher or more than one parent in on that message, which I think is great. I also think the monthly newsletters that principals push out to the families is very helpful because that is chock full of links, and I know that at least my children's teachers remind us to check those newsletters, so I appreciate that extra step that those teachers do. I also think Dr. Terranova, a huge area of strength of his is the communication piece. He is so active on social media. He has monthly town halls. He is constantly, through the communication department, putting out information on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram. And I think if parents are connected through social media, they're able to find that information in an easier capacity. I think the website has improved, but I do think that there is some more work that can be done in that area. But from the time that my oldest started in kindergarten to now, I think the website is much more parent and user-friendly, so I think we're going in the right direction there. In terms of policy, the Board of Education is really charged with making the policy, and I think if parents are looking for input into that policy making and that decision making, they are a group of stakeholders, and I think, contacting one of the board members or coming to a meeting and asking some questions at the public session, it's not an open dialogue with the board at that time, but it at least gives us a person that we can follow up with and engage with after the meeting. And I think, it's not that we don't value parent input, but the board members are elected specifically. One of our charges is to make school policy. But we're always open to speaking with stakeholder groups, depending on the type of policy that we're either writing, revising, or altering or improving. We send it out to stakeholder groups within the district, be it teachers, administrators, various groups, and it's very vetted. I know we've sent some to different association groups. So it sounds like we don't want parent input, and that's not necessarily true, but the function of an elected board member is to help make that policy. So I just wanted to clarify that.
We're down to one last question, I believe. You happy? It's almost over. What are your thoughts on the current and proposed budget for our school district, and how would you determine your budget priorities?
I can go.
Want to go, Elizabeth?
So it's disappointing that we didn't get the full amount of state funding, especially after our foundation aid has been right-sized recently, that we're still coming up, almost $1 million short on state aid. I think prioritizing the most significant needs, and I feel that our central office team and our building administrators have been able to pinpoint that is the intermediate school staffing, special education staffing, and while it would be nice and wonderful and really support programming to have something like the increased strings teacher for Suzuki strings at the elementary level, when we look at the finite amount of resources that we have, where is the biggest impact? And I think that the central office team and the administration has done a good job of proposing why we're allocating funding for those specific additions. Again, it's all about advocacy, and it's about not staying complacent just because a budget season is coming to an end, because there's always a budget season next year. So staying engaged with our elected officials and having them engage in dialogue with us and even building visits. I know we've done that in the past with both our senator and our assemblywoman. I think that's really important so that they get to see the impact when you look at a building like, the intermediate school as an example, that is very at near capacity. So I would say that, I really support the budget that we put forward. We were in a really tough position to make a decision on April 11th when we didn't have the full numbers from the state, but I think as a team did our due diligence, and I'm really grateful for my colleagues and the district staff that put a very complicated process forward that we could walk away from feeling that we did the best that we could in the time that we had and with the resources that we thought we were getting.
Evan, would you like to go next?
Yeah. Dr. T and Derek Valise came to us with a primary, secondary, tertiary plan, all laid out, and it was pretty simple. Which one do you like? Everything had been worked in there, and staffing and then special education were pretty much like the non-negotiables. They had the ability to pull money from the reserve, the planned reserve, as well as the medical needs for the future. So they had that contingency in there. So there wasn't a lot of decision-making to be made. There wasn't a lot to go. And in the back of my head, at the same time, I was also thinking to myself, if it boiled down to it, the reality is we have such a great community where parents are supportive and get involved. We can do a lot of fundraising for all the extracurricular activities. At the end of the day, I feel like that's something that could happen. But with everything they brought to us, there weren't a lot of hard decisions that had to be made because they had a good backup plan to the backup plan.
Yeah, so this budget is solid. Good job making the decision before the state came in with their real numbers. And that's not, it hasn't happened in quite a few years, but it used to be a ritual, like, the running joke was that there'd be a budget on April 1st. So, it will probably happen again. So kind of just knowing that ahead of time. So I applaud you for going for more, going for that higher, approving the higher budget. And it's definitely much better than where we were, like 5-10 years ago. So I like that the priorities were on, on student, that the student important, the important part of the student needs. So like, class sizes, having more staff so that you're not in classes of, 20 and 25. I have noticed that over the years, like when my daughter was in an intermediate, there were so many kids in her math class, there weren't enough chairs. So, they were, sitting on tables and things like that. There, were over 25 in her math class. And then as I was doing Square One Art over the past couple of years, I'm seeing classes of like 18 in kindergarten. It's like, oh, that's awesome. Because anybody who's been in a classroom, there's a big difference between 18 kindergartners and like 21. So we need to keep those class sizes down. So I am very glad that you prioritize that in the budget.
All right, we've got a couple more. I thought that we were over, but we're not. This next one, what would you do to support the bus drivers and transportation department in order to make the bus safe and comfortable for our students? Adam, I'm going to have you go first.
There is currently a plan for cameras. I don't know if that makes the students comfortable, but it'll probably help with the bus drivers, make them more comfortable, so there's some additional vision on what's happening. Just to confirm, the question was what makes the students comfortable?
What would you do to support the bus drivers, our bus drivers and transportation department, to make the buses more safe and comfortable for our students?
I don't know what kind of concern there is for that right now. I think that we do basic training, and there's standards for the bus drivers and what to do and what not to do with the students. I don't see a huge need right there at this point, to be honest with you, or I'm not aware of any at this point.
Okay. Carol, how about?
So bus drivers make or break the day for every kid. They're the first people they see and the last people they see. So we want everybody to be happy in their position, driving our kids and keeping them safe. We are relying on them with our precious cargo. So it's a matter of a conversation and finding out what we need. The new bus garage is lovely. I kind of think it's a little too small, but that is kind of a matter of where our funding is. But, and I would like to see electric buses down the road, a little quieter, which would be safer for everybody, a little less fumes along the loop. So it would be, checking what are their concerns? Do we need more training? Do we need better buses? Better safety systems in the buses, definitely cameras. So that would be a conversation you need to have with transportation. And like sometimes it's the routes too. Some of our routes are so long. Having the newer automated systems that we have to kind of plot things out have been helpful. But just kind of boosting that up, because we do want to make sure our bus drivers are happy and safe and enjoying what they're doing, because they make or break the day.
I think a unique challenge that not only Victor has, but every district with buses is there are seats that are allotted for each child. And then if those children are then driven to school by a parent or a guardian, there are times when there could be buses that are at full capacity because the parents need that public transportation for their children. And there could be a bus, next to it that at the drop-off or pickup at the beginning or end of the day that is a third of the way full. So I think, it's important because unexpected things happen where a child who's typically driven to school by a parent might need to take the bus a day or two. And it's a complicated plot throughout the summer, and I know that our drivers are workhorses and they're out driving those routes, not running, thank goodness. Well, maybe they do, but driving those routes to really fine-tune the times. I think another added complexity is our turnaround time from secondary drop-off at school and elementary pickup. But I'm wondering if there could be some creative scheduling that takes place. Speaking about my own children's bus, it is at capacity. It is busting at the seams, and God love our bus drivers because they have hearts of gold and they put up with a lot, extreme heat, very cold winters, keeping our kids safe. But I'm wondering if there could be an opportunity to look at rerouting some of the pickup and drop-off lines, and also looking at a way to shift if children are frequently driven by parents and how that might impact seats allocated on a bus.
Could I go back? I actually completely misunderstood that question when you asked. Yeah. Yes, I could not agree more with what Elizabeth was talking about. My kids have actually talked about that. Assigned seating on the bus is a big thing, and then actual bus driver salaries as well. I think the rate of increase for their salaries was less than the standard for some of the rest of the school members. So that is something that could be looked at as well. And again, the building's beautiful, and having conversations with them up there is important. So I apologize. I did completely misunderstood that question. Appreciate our bus drivers a lot.
Okay, this one is describe the core of Board of Education service in one linchpin core value word besides service. So Carol, we'll start with you.
Describe, what was it again?
Yep. Describe the core of Board of Education service in one linchpin core value word besides service.
So voice, it's like a Board of Education is supposed to be representative of the community, the taxpayers. So I would hope that the board would have their voice, would represent them.
Adam, what would your word be?
Representation.
Elizabeth?
Teamwork. It's not any one individual, it's a group effort.
And think that concludes our question for the evening, unless anybody out there has any more questions. Doesn't look like it, so thank you guys all for your time, and VCS for allowing us this forum tonight, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for hosting.